Hello there. In this code flow tutorial, we're going to be talking about the span and the div tag. Let's go. So when talking about the span and the div tag, we all know this is a bigger piece of the bigger picture. I mean the fact that they are all parts of what we call the block and the inline elements. And of course we've created an episode specially for the block and inline elements, but we have to explain this part because it is very crucial in your CSS styles. We're going to be using much of the div and the span tag for styling your website. Because I think the definition is quite easy for the div and the span tag. But before we go deep into that, let's first know the meaning of the block and the inline element. So basically, what is a block element? The fact that you've been using HTML attribute and element without realizing that some of them are actually block elements and some of them are actually inline elements is the most surprising part of this episode. But anyway, let's get to it. So what does a block element do? A block element basically, it takes up the full width available. That is, it stretches to the left and the right side of the website. It stretches as far as it can. That's just the same definition for a block element. And one thing you can use to always identify a block level element is that they always start on a new line. When you use a block element, they start immediately on a new line. Okay, so what is an inline element? What differentiates it from the block element? An inline element also takes up as much width, but it is just the necessary width. It doesn't just take much width anyway, just the ones that are necessary for the stuff to be sized within, something like that. So let me say, and yeah, an inline element does not start on a new line, it starts on the same line. I think we have managed to use a bit of the span tag, but anyway, I think let's just say like an inline element most of the time you have noticed them. If we go back to our Google Chrome, we have those. Let's open our website project, and if we go to our HTML right here, main.html, and I'm going to open this with my Google Chrome. Yeah, okay, we can see that some of the elements here, they are just starting a new line, they're not on the same line. But when we are writing about all those text formatting yesterday, it's called that all of them are on the same line, just like this, and they're just stretching as far as they can. Okay, so from this simple preview, not that at least we've been making use of some block elements and we're making use of some inline elements all along the way. But okay, so the question is, the div and the span tag, which elements are they? Are they the block elements or they are inline elements? Now the truth is that the div tag is a block element while the span tag is an inline element. I'm going to making use of them in some few examples that will show up in the next few minutes. So right now let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. I'm going to have to open this code in the Visual Studio Code. It might take some while. Okay, let's agree it took a while, but anyway, here we are. So what do we do first? As usual, we make a comment. Let's close the less than symbol with an exclamation mark and 2 dots, and we have our comment. And right here we can write making a span and div tag. And then we can press our enter and start the code. Now how do we create a div tag? We use the span and the div tag are actually HTML elements, okay, not attributes or anything. So they have their own set of attributes too that you can actually use with them, and we'll explore that as we move on in this tutorial. So now a span tag, we're going to make the first example is going to be the div tag. So how do we make use of a div tag? I told you that a div tag can be used for separating parts of a web page itself. A span tag is just for parts of a text document or text, something like that. Okay, but div, like we can use div to separate a whole web page, like make a 3 page website or something like that. And what span tag is just for within lines and stuff like that. So right now let's try and make a very simple example. So I've got my paragraph right here. I've got my paragraph right here, and I want to type some few words. I love to teach tutorials because they are good for me, and I love what oh sorry let me come back here, what I teach and what I am teaching them. Okay, let's just agree that this doesn't make any sense, but anyway, it's gonna be good for the practice. So we're gonna actually come back here. Now we have our paragraph right here. So now the question is, how does the div tag and the span tag, how do they work? It's very simple. I think that the span tag can apply within lines, but the div tag can be good in separating let me say elements from themselves. See, now how do we do that? Now I think, let me copy this. I want to show you something. Let me copy this and let me paste this. Now I can actually put both of those texts into a div tag. How do I do that? Div, write div. It's going to give us the closing tag. So I want you to copy this closing tag, press Ctrl X to cut it, come back here and paste it. Now right here we can see that the div tag is enclosing the paragraph tag. Now if we save this, okay, and we load our web page, don't be expecting anything fantastic. We're just gonna see this, okay? But now where everything gets much more interesting is when you go to the developer tools and you discover that by the time you come back to developer tools, you can, when you scroll down, or when you press this guy, or you scroll down like this, you can see the div tag right here, and it showcases the two paragraph. You can see the two paragraph right here. So now anything that we apply to the div tag will also be applied to the p tag. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Now div. Now what are the attributes you can use with div? I'm going to use the popular style attribute. So when I click on the style attribute, we can set a color, position, padding, or margin, or height of display. This is a little bit of CSS stylings. Okay, we'll talk about more of this in HTML styles. So right now let's apply a very quick color. I want a color blue, and I'm going to save this. And by the time we go back to our Chrome and we reload this, we can find out that our text color has changed to blue. As you can see, our text color is now blue. Now okay, we've actually managed to use a bit of the div style, that means the color blue, and so we've applied a bit of something to the div tag, okay, and you can see that it's kind of quite impressive right here. So how can we actually work with the span tag? I think that the span tag can actually work within the lines of a document. So let's try something new. Span. Now I want you to copy the span here. We're going to actually, maybe after this and, okay, okay, I'm going to paste it right here, and so we have a span tag like this right in the middle of a sentence. So right now, if we actually save this, the span tag won't do much as usual, but for the sake of previewing, let's preview this. And okay, okay, let's come back here, and if we scroll down and we enlarge this, and we enlarge, I think we wrote on the second one, we can actually see the span tag here. Okay, you can see the span tag right here. Now how do we actually know that we're actually using the span tag? Let's create a style for the span tag. Okay, the style for the span tag, and I want its color. Who doesn't? A background color. I want the background color to be brown, and I'm going to save this. Okay, so let's go back to our Chrome and let's preview this. And as you can see right here, let me close developer tools. If we scroll down a bit, we can see the fact that we have actually styled this aspect of the document using the span tag. So basically, when we get to HTML styles, you're going to get more of those guys. But now that you know how they work and what you can actually do with them, it's very quite important you know them right at this moment. That's why we're taking the span and div tag as a separate topic. When we talk about the block and inline elements, we're going to brush more about how to use those things, to style your website even the more. Now, the most useful part of the of the div tag is the fact that we use them for ID and classes. Very soon I'm going to take you the HTML ID and class very soon. So we're going to talk about the the attributes of the ID and class and how we can use them in CSS styles. So right now let's try and create an ID. So to create an ID, you write ID. This is the ID, okay, div ID, and you can type in, I want to name my ID, okay, okay, and intergalactic. Intergalactic. Okay, that looks quite amazing. So definitely I can give an ID to this intergalactic, but I can give an ID to this particular paragraph. But now where the issue comes in, that we're not able to see much of what this ID can do, except if we take a bit of the ID and the class tag, which will come up very soon in the next few episodes. Talk about the ID and the class tag, and we're going to be able to look at how we can apply this thing with CSS to make our page look quite okay. So we can actually use div ID, and in fact we can even create a class, a div class. Okay, but I think I will actually advise you that you should only use one of those, maybe either the ID or either the class for styling. Okay, so to avoid confusion and mistakes. So I want to say class, I can say enter 2, and by the time I want to apply this ID and the class, I'll use them when I want to use my CSS. So basically I can also do the same thing with the span tag. I can give it an ID, span ID. Oh, sorry. Okay, span ID. Okay, a minute. I've gotten lazy with my typing. Span ID, and okay, we can write maybe Galactica. Quite amazing, and we can save this. And by the time we go back to our code and preview this, you're not going to be seeing much anyway. But the best way to view it, we can go to our developer tools, and when we scroll down, I'll go to div ID. We can see the ID and the class, and this can only we can make effective use of them only and only if we actually say we want to use our CSS with it. When we talk about HTML styles, we can actually make use of this when we talk about HTML styles too. So I hope that we're able to make proper use of that part. Okay, so that's all for the div and the span tag. I'm going to see you in the next tutorial as we explore block and inline elements.